Good morning, everybody. It's your friendly neighborhood old soldier coming at you once again from Robson County, North Carolina, where the temperatures have cooled off. The grass is now officially brown, and the soybeans are about ready for harvest. Anyway, that's for you, Brother Kyle. God bless all my fellow veterans out there, brothers and sisters, one and all. Thank you for your service to this great nation. Apologize for not getting one out on Veterans Day, but believe it or not, I was actually working with my business, J&L Shooting Academy. As I had two fine Americans that wanted to exercise their rights under North Carolina law to obtain the necessary training in order for them to obtain a North Carolina concealed carry permit. So, with it being this time of year, I have to split that class into 2 days. And I had a student on Thursday and Friday I accommodated for said mentioned reasons as well. Then I was also the guest speaker at the community college on Friday morning. Means they had to scrape the bottom of the barrel. But in all seriousness, I was humbled and honored to be there and be their guest speaker. It was great to be there and share my story with students and faculty and fellow veterans that were there. So it was a good day. It was a good day. Got to talk to my son back from Romania this weekend. And, hopefully here soon I'll get to see him in person, as he is stationed down at Hunter Airfield in Savannah, Georgia, which is about a little over 4 hours as the crow flies from here down Interstate 95. Get to see him real soon, and our other grandson. He goes out to his real dad's house in Columbus, Georgia, and picks him up. Just so y'all know, my other son was my son's best friend. I'm not going to divulge details, but there was a time where he was with us. We were his legal guardians. He is my other son. Love him as much. And don't get me wrong, he loves his real parents. He absolutely does. The circumstances be what they were. He had to stay with us for his own mental health, if you will, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it other than I'm attached to him, he's attached to me. He's my other son, and I love him dearly. Just glad he's home. But yeah, so that was my congested weekend, if you will, folks. I said we finished with 2 students yesterday. One gentleman, 65 years old, nervous as all get out. We got on the range, and I always do 20 rounds of qualification before I have them do the 30 round or 20 rounds of familiarization before I have them shoot the 30 round minimum qualification course. Those of you don't know, if you live in the state of North Carolina, part of the range qualification is that you must shoot 10 rounds at 3 yards, 10 rounds at 5, and 10 rounds at 7, with a minimum of 21 out of 30 rounds hitting the target in a scoreable section. I'd have to pull up a target and show you where all that's at. The gentleman, he hit 28 out of 30. Because after we fired those first 20 rounds, his nervousness worked its way out a little bit, and we got into the qualification. focused on the fundamentals and the basics that I taught him. I'm not saying I'm a great teacher, but apparently he read the material and applied what he read and what little bit I told him, and he was able to do well. Like he rented one of my guns, rented my Taurus TH9. I wanted to try it. Okay. So he's going to come back tomorrow with his Glock 26 and practice with it. See how that goes. It's a short-barreled gun. So I'm not exactly 100% sure how that's going to bode for him, but we'll see, because he's got big hands. But anyway, it was a good day yesterday. They qualified. They got their certificates. Now they can go to the sheriff's department and submit their application so they can obtain their North Carolina concealed carry permit. And so now that brings me to my next point I want to talk about. Every state's different on that. I get that. I truly do. As you've got some states that don't require any training. Okay, cool. You've got some states that require you to take a class. Some states have just online course. Up where my son-in-law is stationed in Washington State. I don't know if it's everybody or just if you're in the military, but all he had to do was go to the county the dealer resides in and apply and got his Washington State concealed carry permit. No training, no class, no nothing, no certificate. And not that I'm opposed to constitutional carry. I am not. But I think it has to be metered or tempered with some type of gun safety training before we let somebody go out. But see, that's where I have a conflict within myself. While I believe everybody should receive some type of firearm safety and marksmanship training before they can carry a handgun, I'm adamantly opposed to anything that the government would mandate that we have to do in order to keep a right. If you understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not opposed to constitutional carry. I'm all for it, but how do we temper that? Somebody give me an idea of what their idea is on this. You know, because you got some people, I don't need to take no class. I've been shooting guns my whole life. Okay, good for you, pal. Just because you can shoot a gun doesn't necessarily temper when you should shoot a gun. That's what I'm getting at. Why, God, if I'm threatened, I'm going to shoot somebody. Okay. I get that. Everybody has a God-given right to self-defense. Not a constitutional right, but a God-given right to protect yourself by whatever means necessary. But I think some prevailing attitudes are that, by God, I'm an American citizen, and I got a right to keep and bear arms, and I'll shoot any son of a gun that comes in and threatens me. Okay, let's calm down there, Yosemite Sam. Because the one thing I do admire about the North Carolina's requirements, I don't like that term, but there it is that you have to take an 8-hour class, in-person class. It could actually be shorter in North Carolina. I'll be quite honest with you. The material can be covered in less than 8 hours. But North Carolina requires 8 hours, so every student gets 8 hours. And that's not counting range time. Range time is totally separate. The whole range qualification piece is separate from that 8 hours of training. The first 2 hours, though, is nothing more than the legal aspect of when you can and cannot use deadly force. It covers escalation of force. It talks about the use of deadly force in defense of property and defense of others. It talks about retreat. See, North Carolina does not have a duty to retreat. However, if there is an option to retreat, sometimes that is the better option than to stand there and fight. Oh, soldier, what are you talking about? It's simple. You get to a situation where you think you're going to draw your firearm and protect yourself and you can get out of that situation without shooting somebody, or worse yet, you yourself being shot, take it all day long. Take it all day long. My granddaddy used to say it takes a bigger man to walk away from a fight than it does to stand up with one. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't protect yourself if threatened. However, sometimes a fight's just not worth staying in the fight if you gather momentum. If you can get out of a fight, do so. The other thing, in North Carolina, if you instigate a fight, and what I mean by a fight, it starts off as a verbal argument. Sometimes that's all it takes to trigger somebody, is a verbal argument. Things lead to hands-on, whatever the case may be, but if it's determined that you were the aggressor, your right to use deadly force in self-defense is negated. Unless you clearly communicate to the people you're fighting with, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm walking away from this, and you clear the area and they come after you. But that's a hell of a lot to prove in a court of law. So, back to the question at hand. How do we temper our right to bear arms with some type of training before people just go out and get a gun and start carrying it? Because I know there are people that watch this channel that seem to think that your right to bear arms supersedes trying to get any knowledge and training. And I disagree with that. What I'll agree with them on is this, that the government ought to mandate some type of training. I don't like government mandates. I don't like government requirements. So how do we coerce, recruit, whatever term you choose to use, to get people to want to seek training, to make them a more responsible gun owner, to help them so they don't invariably wind up in a shooting situation that ought not have ever occurred. Because rule number 4, universal gun safety: know your target, what's beyond it, what's around it. Several reasons behind that. Because recently there was a video that's been floating around of a man in Texas. Guy comes up to his apartment, I think it was Texas. Anyway, they come up to his apartment, 2 men pretending to be maintenance. He knew they weren't. So they started banging on the door and kicking on the door to try and get the door busted in. And so he takes his firearm and shoots through the door. Apparently had a ring camera so he could see who was out there. And I get that. But here's the thing. It was in an apartment complex. And straight across the hallway was another apartment. Now, I don't know if any of the bullets hit the door, but they hit around it. And I don't know how thick that plastered wall was. Now, I'm not saying the man didn't have a right to defend himself. He absolutely did. And maybe in the heat of the moment, he forgot that rule per se. Now, the drawback to that, should he wait until that door got kicked in? I'm not going to say he should have. But did he think about, and I don't know, I'm speculating here, did he think about what was beyond those 2 gentlemen when he was shooting? You see, the other video that's out there that I actually have incorporated into my class now was the shooting in Houston. I think it was Houston, a year or so ago. Man and his son are sitting in a restaurant, and an armed robber comes in waving a gun, demanding money. So the man takes cash and throws on the floor. The robber picks it up and he goes to a table where the other people had huddled underneath the table and threw cash out. And on his way out, as he passed the first gentleman, who was a concealed carry person, drew his gun and shot the young man. The young man dropped the money in his gun. Well, up to that point in time, the man had every right to defend himself. He waited to the prime opportunity, knowing that he was not going to hit other patrons, and took his shots as necessary. But see, then his brain literally checked out with common sense, because then he goes and grabs the money and tells people, hey, come get your money. Well, that's tampering with evidence. I don't care who you are and what your legal right to defend yourself was at that point in time. That's tampering with evidence. Then he picks up the gun to discover it was a BB gun. Now, I wouldn't have got upset over it, because those BB guns today and these airsoft guns they make look just like the real thing. You've got to get up close and personal on those things to determine that they are either an airsoft or BB gun. Because if they got the mandatory orange on them, that can be covered up with a coat of metallic paint. It can be cut off. It can be broke off. Either way it goes, the robber gave the impression he had a real gun, was intended to use it. So there was a reasonable apprehension of fear for life. I wouldn't have convicted him in a court of law for that, for the man shooting this young individual. But what he was guilty of was tampering with evidence, because once he determined it was a fake gun, he took it and slung it across the restaurant in a fit of rage. And then the coup de grace, the big bold mistake he made, is he got up, took his son with him, got in a truck and left the scene. So now, in the court of public opinion, he's got something to hide. Why did you leave if you had a right to defend yourself? And see, why am I bringing this up? Because it gives those of us who are responsible gun owners a bad name. It gives those of us who are doing what the law says to do a bad name. And I mean by a bad name, it makes us all look like we're a bunch of ignorant rednecks, when that's far, far, far from the case. And that's why I want your input as to what you would think is a reasonable aspect of trying to get people trained that want to carry a concealed firearm, but without mandating it. I don't like mandates. I don't like, a government telling me what I have to do when the federal government has already given me that right. But at the same token, I see the need for people to have training. I see the need for people to know what the laws of their various states are. Okay? Just because you have a right to carry a firearm to protect yourself does not necessarily make you knowledgeable as to when and if you should use it. Now, there's going to be the crowd in here that's going to say, well, better be tried by jury of 12 and carried by peers of 6. Oh, understandably. But the way our legal system is structured, and I'm looking at just the reality of it, unless you've got some type of paid-for legal service, it could bankrupt you trying to prove your innocence in a court of law. I'm just telling you the truth of the matter. I tell all my students, I don't care who you go through, do your homework, do your research, find the best organization that you think will provide representation for you, and join. Whether it's Right to Bear, USCCA, Law Shield, and I guess there's a few others out there. And I'm not trying to tell anybody how to spend their money. God be it for me to do that. But at the end of the day, you find yourself in a situation where the police don't believe your side of the story, okay? Or you've got a busybody neighbor that's telling a whole different story, and the police decide to charge you, and now you're in handcuffs. You don't have the money in the bank because you get in front of some panty-waist liberal judge that says, well, you had a gun and shot this person. I don't believe in self-defense, so I'm setting your bond at whatever outrageous price. Now let's say you're able to get a second mortgage on your house to get that bond. Well, now how are you going to pay for a lawyer? Because most good criminal defense attorneys, at a minimum, are going to have a $5,000 to $6,000 retainer fee, if not more. And God only knows what their hourly rate's going to be. Then to top it all off, they might call in an expert witness that you've got to pay for. Okay? And that expert witness testimony is not going to be cheap. And what I mean by an expert witness testimony, I'm talking about a forensic specialist, a behavioral whatever. They will call these people in on your behalf to aid your case. So I always tell every one of my clients, you need to consider some type of protective measure that, God forbid, you find yourself into a shooting incident that you can call and a lawyer will be provided. Be it that you're not the instigator or the aggressor. That's one thing, other thing I stress. Do not be the instigator or the aggressor in a shooting incident. Or just a self-defense incident, period. Because some of these companies will cover you whether you use a gun, a knife, a book, a broomstick, whatever to defend yourself. But what it boils down to at the end of the day, if you try to rely on what little money you have saved, or you've bought a house, you paid it off, now you got to take a second mortgage out to fight your legal battles, you could potentially wind up losing your home. And the other part is, you might be sitting in jail for 30 to 45 days until your significant other can close on a secondary mortgage loan. See, that's the other thing. A second mortgage, it's what it is. It's another mortgage on your home. Those loans don't close overnight at all. The only thing I can think of, it may be 15 days tops. Well, you're still sitting in jail without an attorney. And next thing you know, we're going to give you a public defender. Well, we all know how that goes. They're just going to plea bargain and get you down to the less charge they possibly can. They're not concerned about your innocence. They're concerned with, well, you want to get out of jail, don't you? They're not concerned about your reputation, your standing in your community. You see, if you plead to a lesser degree because that seems to be the easy way out because you couldn't get a lawyer, well, that's also damaging to your reputation. If you own a business, that could kill your business. There's so many impacts. So I got to get in and get to work. But y'all tell me what you think down below. How can we get people to want to get training and to where it's not mandated, if you will. Okay? Tell me what you think down in the comments below, and I'll talk to y'all later. It's For the Neighborhood Old Soldier out.